Hey there, everyone. Aaron here from techphotoguy.com. I am joined today by Jeff Carlson. We are going to talk about the state of AI in the photography world. Uh, you're probably familiar with me on this channel, having written a book on AI in photography. This is not a new topic for me. It's not a new topic for Jeff either, but folks might not know you as well. So, Jeff, share a little bit about, just quick version of your background and how you landed to be a guy who, among other things, is doing a weekly newsletter on photo AI.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm a writer and a photographer. I've been a freelance writer for a long time covering tech and photography. And, as soon as AI started to become more than just a catchphrase, I put more focus on that. And so I started a newsletter. It's photo-ai.com. You can go to it. And I also, for the last, during the last year, I wrote a column for Popular Photography magazine called The Smarter Image. And so basically, this thing that we all thought was a tiny little niche part of photography is now everywhere in the news and the conversations. And so I feel like we're in a good place to talk about this.
Yeah, I think so. And there's one thing that I think we can definitely agree on is that if we talk about photo AI, there's no shortage of opinions amongst photographers when you get into the topic of artificial intelligence. I don't often purchase t-shirts that I disagree with, but when I saw someone had a Rage Against the Machine Learning t-shirt,
That is
I
awesome.
I had to get that just because it's a topic where you mention AI and so many photographers instantly get just ticked off either about the technology angle, the copyright angle, the business angle, or something else. And so I guess let's talk about generative AI, right? So AI creating imagery because that's hot. It's in the news. We see, Midjourney and Stable Diffusion and Dolly and Adobe Firefly, which just came out in beta a couple weeks ago as we record this. And photographers, it's fascinating, but I feel like a lot of photographers go very quickly into one of two bad places. And one of those bad places they go is freaking out that AI is going to put them out of a job.
Yeah.
And what's your take on that, Jeff? What's your usual comment when somebody starts worrying that artificial intelligence is going to replace professional photography?
Yeah. Well, that's like one of those broad overarching ideas. It's like, well, okay, well, maybe it's going to replace a few people. But like, I think the core of this is that photographers, we've sort of lived through a few different waves of this, right? Because there was, I mean, from even let's include desktop publishing in the mix. Like if you were a printer and you hand set type or anything like that, then desktop publishing came in, revolutionized things, changed a whole lot of stuff. And a lot of people who, were sort of stuck in the quote old ways, I'm making myself sound ancient, but they had a hard time adjusting. But the people who
Mm-hmm.
picked up on it, I mean, I basically have a career because I jumped on desktop publishing right away. And so I think for photographers, it's a little more sensitive because they've lived through, stock photography becoming big and then just
Right.
utterly being decimated. They've lived through, cameras and photography, the camera market being something that was really reserved for a small niche of people to now, anybody can do it. And so now here's this other thing. And not only is it that somebody else is going to come in and take my work or do something that maybe I was specialized in. This is something that I'm not specialized in because
Right.
I'm not even pushing a shutter button. What I'm doing is I'm typing some words to describe something that I kind of want to see and just letting a machine somewhere, and I think that's part of it too. Like
Right.
like you can't even point to a single person like that guy took my job. It's no, it's just AI, like the cloud, the
Right.
whole bit. To make what in some cases are beautiful photorealistic looking images. Like so
Right.
I get it, but that's that's really surface level, and once you actually start playing with it and start doing it, and you realize that everybody has 7 fingers and faces sometimes don't work, you know,
Right.
that
Hands are
that
really
that
tricky.
that tempers hands are really difficult. That really sort of tempers the fear. I think it's justified in a sense, but, you know, again, and
Right.
like people have probably heard this a lot too. Like it's just another tool. It's another tool for, doing a whole number of other things. And
Right.
also, as you said, it's here. Like it's not going away.
Right. And
So,
that's, I mean, like stock photography was screwed long before AI became a thing, right? And
oh
that's,
yeah.
and that's probably the one genre of photography that I would point to and I would say, yes, if you are a photographer and 100% of your work is stock photography, that's how you make your living at this point.
Hmm.
I think you're in a very fraction of a percentage of the professional working photographers because
I was going to say,
microstock is
I'd
already
be really
decimated
impressed,
that.
honestly.
Um, yes, you probably are in that tiny sliver that I would say maybe has a legitimate beef where you're going to legitimately be concerned that AI is going to replace what you do because stock photography by its nature is creating images with all these different options and scenes, and a lot of them are pretty generic and things like that. And that's kind of what AI image generation does. But for most professional working photographers, they're making their money creating custom work for clients in weddings, in portraiture of some sort, in commercial or corporate work. And when somebody commissions you to photograph, their child for their high school senior photos, they want photos of their child, right? They don't want
Right.
photos of an AI generated child. And they probably don't even want photos of, AI generated versions based of their on their child, right? They're going to want something that they have that emotional connection to. Same thing with a wedding or with a corporate event, right? I mean, a couple weeks ago, I photographed a company's annual sales awards dinner presentation at their annual conference. And, I went and took photographs for about 3 hours of their people enjoying the event and getting presented awards on the stage. And then they had, live music and dancing afterwards and all that. And like, they want photos of their salespeople receiving this award on the stage, right? They don't want a
Yeah.
computer generated image of some random salesperson receiving an award. And so
Right.
that
Well,
cus-
and
that custom nature is the value that you're providing to that client. Hey there, a quick message from the not quite as distant past. Jeff and I are going to do a live stream Q&A about all things photography AI. That's going to be on Wednesday, April 19th at 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. There's a link down below, and you can leave your questions here, and we will tackle them on that live stream. I hope you can tune in live. If not, the replay will be here on this channel. We're going to talk about anything photography AI related, so let us know your thoughts. And now let's get back to my conversation with Jeff.
yeah. Well, and also, like two things jump to mind, even in things that aren't really focused on people. Like, let's say you're a real estate photographer, like you're still having to go shoot a specific place. You can't expect that the AI knows what the inside of 1234 Smith Boulevard looks
Mm-hmm.
like, right? Now, will AI, supplement that a lot? I think there are lots of different ways, for replacing skies and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. Like we're already seeing that, but you still
Right.
have to go and shoot the photo and start with something.
Yeah, for people who are creating images or art for the sake of creating images or art, right? AI can do that. Now, fine art photographers, if you are a fine art photographer and you're creating art for the sake of art that you're then selling,
Hmm.
the reality is those people that are buying your art, they're already choosing you out of hundreds or thousands of other artists who are creating work that's in some way similar to yours, right? Whether it's beach landscape scenes or abstract black and white scenes or, colorful whatever it is, they're already making a choice to choose your image or to choose your work. And yes, there will be a whole lot more work on the market created by various AI prompts and systems. But that doesn't mean that the human element is going away. And I'm already starting to see in some circles a little bit of kind of inclination of backlash against this computer generated art. And
Hmm.
it's like people are starting to realize, but hey, wait a minute, don't we want to actually support human artists so that they have jobs doing this? So I think
Right.
that'll be interesting to see.
Well, like that makes me think of landscape photography, for example. Like if you are selling prints, like let's say you're making your living selling prints because you go to amazing locations and you shoot, there's these fantastic vistas, etc.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you're already in a small niche of people who are able to do that and make a living at it, and that's great. Because I think if you are coming out and saying I'm going to be a landscape photographer and I'm just going to go and shoot everywhere, chances are there might be a lot of AI generative art that replaces some of that. It's still not good about like shooting a specific
Mm-hmm.
location,
Right.
um, but that'll probably improve. But the thing is, like, if you are a person who sells prints, people are coming to you because they want a great image, but it's not necessarily that they can't get it anywhere else or they can get it anywhere else. Like, I mean,
Right.
as a great example, you look at the famous Japanese maple that's at the gardens in Portland, right?
Right. Right.
It has been photographed so many times. You can get almost any time of day, like go and find a picture of that. And maybe somebody will you know choose an AI generated picture of something like that and put it on their wall. Okay, even now we're talking about like tiny
Mm-hmm.
percentage of chances that this is going to happen. What people are going to be turning to photographers for is the story of it. And even if that's just, here's a picture, it's a beautiful picture, and it's maybe a lot like somebody else's beautiful picture, but you have a story about it. And so perhaps they had that connection. Like, I know that Aaron shot this and, he had to avoid a lightning storm and, I can't even think of any good examples, but basically,
Right.
like there's going to be something there that's going to make that stand out, and that's kind of what you're shooting for anyway. So if it's just, oh no, there's going to be a whole lot of pretty pictures of things that aren't being captured by real photographers, the market's already flooded with that,
Right.
even
Right.
captured by real photographers. So,
Right. The issue with fine art photography is the marketing side of things, right? I mean,
oh
I
yeah,
for years I've had people talk to me as the tech photo guy. They're like, "Hey, what online platform should I use because I want to start selling my photos online?" And so we will talk about, does it make sense to use SmugMug or Zenfolo or Photo Shelter or some other, Squarespace, whatever system they want to choose to put their photos online. And I will happily answer those questions for them. But the reality is that is like 2% of the actual work of selling your fine art photography online. And the other 98%, like 95% of that is marketing and getting somebody to even know that you exist. Because if they just go
yeah.
online and they're like, I want cool pictures of sunsets on the Oregon coast, I mean, good lord, you're competing with
There might be one or two out there.
thousands of other people that are selling that. So the generative AI is not going to put most photographers out of business. And in fact, like you said, it's another tool that we can use, right? I gave a talk to an Adobe Photoshop user group a few weeks ago, and I talked about, you know, incorporating some of this into your work, right? I mean, if you're a high school senior high school senior portrait photographer, and the kind of cliche thing is if the girl that you're photographing plays the violin, you're probably going to take a picture of her with her violin, right? Because that's one of the things you're going to do. But
Yeah.
why not composite that photo into a cool AI generated art piece of her on a stage under lights in this big domed grand theater? that you can then sell a 20 by 30 fine art canvas to her mom to hang on the wall to, remember her daughter's high school musical adventures that way, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're not going to use it with every photo that you take of that high school senior, right? But for that one showcase piece, maybe you create a really cool fine art thing that kind of sets you apart, and it's different than what all the other photographers are doing.
Yeah, completely. Well, and I think, again, going to this as a tool, it's something that will enhance the skills that you might not have. Like maybe you are an amazing photographer and you just don't know how, or haven't put in the time, or just aren't very good at doing compositing, or doing retouching, or things like that, where maybe in the past you would have had to hire that out to a professional retoucher, or heaven forbid, did your own sort of sky or background replacement. And if you didn't know what you were doing, that picture of the girl
Right.
on the stage just is suddenly like just nightmare fuel, right? So being able to take advantage of these things as a photographer who doesn't have maybe other skills, but that the IA can supplement, that works out really well. Or even like prototyping, and you know envisioning things. Like maybe you have a photo shoot coming up and you have an idea of what you want, and what photographers will do, they'll either like go find similar photographs or maybe make sketches or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't it be nice if you could say, all right, this is what I have in mind for this photo shoot. I've got this person sitting on a horse, in 18th century Victorian clothing, and you can build some very quick AI generated rough sketches, basically,
Right.
so that when you get there, the people who are at the photo shoot, the model, the hair and makeup people, like, they already know what you're going for. And then when you do it, what you capture is the high resolution, high
Right.
quality, good energy from the model, that sort of
Right.
of
Your version of
situation.
that. Right. Yeah. I had
Exactly. Yeah.
lunch with a photographer a few days ago, and we were talking about it. And one of the things he said he's enjoying using some of this for is just to come up with ideas. Like, he knows he wants to do something with this subject or this topic, and he's just playing around with stuff to see what it comes up with. And yeah,
Yeah.
80% of it he just discards right off the fly, but 20% of it he's like, oh, that has potential. What could I maybe do there, right? Um,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and I feel, yeah,
actually,
go ahead.
sorry. And actually, that brings up another quick thing to mention, is that people have this idea that you type in some words and you get this amazing result. And the reality is, you're going to type in some words, you're going to get four things that look maybe okay, and then you're going to iterate on one, and you're going to change your words. And so it is not an easy process to just get this thing in your head, because you have to
Right,
describe it, you don't know how it's going to interpret it. And so just the idea that, oh, all I have to do is type, woman on a horse, and you're going to get something amazing, is really not the case. So you have to like keep that in mind too.
right. And I feel like if we're talking about generative AI, we have to touch on the other rabbit hole that photographers will often go down when we start talking about it, and that is copyright. And the copyright
Copyright.
concerns and the copyright problems that happen with some of the models that are out there, because we have leaders of some of the projects that have said, yeah, we trained our machine learning algorithms by scraping the internet. Copyright be
Hmm.
damned. We just scraped everything we could find out there. There have been a few notable examples that we've all seen called out where, like, a watermark from a stock photo agency has showed up in a result of an image. Um, and a lot of photographers are anywhere from annoyed to downright pissed off that their work was
Hmm.
probably scraped and used to train these machine learning algorithms. What's your take on that, Jeff? What do you say to them? I know the answer I have, but I'm curious what your reaction is to that.
um, Obviously, I think we should just sue everybody out of existence. That's the way it goes. No, um, you know, I hate to use like a really old cliche, but like the horses left the barn. If you didn't want your images to be used in any other way except the ones that you controlled, you wouldn't have put them on the internet in the first place. I mean, that's kind of been the way the internet has been. Now, I completely understand that you don't want anybody misusing your imagery, and I think there's a lot of confusion over the fact that these systems, they aren't just grabbing patches of your photo. They're not going to take your
Right.
spectacular sunset and paste it into another image. Like that's not how this works at all. And so like it is literally generating things from a field of noise and making decisions about, well, what are the next steps to make a thing that looks like what I know is a horse, right? So it's murky. And while I think that companies like I think it was Getty maybe who are
I think,
suing some of the big.
yeah, yeah. I know Getty's
Yeah,
involved with some lawsuits.
yeah, because you could see like a mangled Getty watermark on there, and like that's legit. For most of it, it's hard to tell,
Right.
but
And
I do think that Adobe's doing something interesting.
right, yeah, and and we could, yeah, let's talk about Firefly, but just quick diversion before that, right? The reality is what these machine learning algorithms are doing, whether they scraped the internet and took anything they could find, or whether they only used, copyright safe material, either way, all they're doing, and I say all they're doing, not to trivialize it, but they're doing the same thing that we have done as photographers and all the predecessor photographers we know have done, is that we've gone out to make an image, and very often we go out and we go to make an image and we're thinking about other work we've seen, right? I've made numerous photos where I've gone out and very specifically I'm like, as I make this photo, I'm going to try and incorporate this thing that I saw in this other photo by some other photographer, whether it
Mhm.
be a viewpoint, a lighting style, an artistic technique, a camera technique, something where I've gone out and I'm like, yeah, I really liked this photo by, so and so. I'm going to go try and make something of my own that's inspired by that, right? And it's like, that's really what all these algorithms are doing. Now, they're doing it, infinitely faster
Yeah.
with a
Oh yeah.
infinitely broader data set than any one photographer has ever had before. But you mentioned Adobe Firefly, and that's kind of interesting because, well, yes, some of the other models are problematic from a copyright standpoint, and, like a lot of legal things, the reality is that will get worked out in court, and courts and attorneys and corporations will probably be the ones who end up most impacted by that, not the average day to day photographer.
Yeah.
It was really only a matter of time until somebody would come up with a more copyright friendly version of this, right? Because the technology is there, it's not going to be uninvented. And Adobe did that in, I guess it was late March of 2023, when they said, "Hey, we're doing generative AI. We are calling it Adobe Firefly. There's a beta program. We're eventually going to incorporate it into our Creative Suite applications." And all of the images that we used to train the models were public domain images. They were openly, freely licensed images, or they were images from Adobe stock where we have the rights to use them for this purpose. Seems like, and assuming Adobe's not the only one who ever does this, it
Yeah.
seems like the copyright argument is just going to kind of go away. I mean, it's almost going to be looked at, I think, as a momentary glitch where, oh, for the first year that these were really in the public realm, there were some copyright issues. Am I missing
Yeah.
something? Am I oversimplifying
Well, maybe. Well, it's legal stuff, so we're probably vastly
That's true. That's
oversimplifying
true.
some of it. But that some of the, I think some of the generative AI companies have done some bad actions again,
Mm-hmm.
like that Getty, and I
Right.
think that they will probably get their hands slapped for it. Um, what I find more interesting from Adobe's take, and we haven't gotten the whole picture yet, but they also said that they are going to somehow reimburse Adobe stock people in some way. And of course, I think my first thought was, oh, well, maybe somehow they know that when I generated a picture of, a kitten, that it may have pulled some data from some other cats in Adobe stock. I
Right.
doubt that it's that fine grained, but they do have some sort of a plan
Right.
to compensate people. Now, that could just be, we just want to say that and bring more people into Adobe stock, which I guess is valid. But the other side of it is they are using their, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but basically their like tracking technology that
Mm-hmm.
basically flags this image as something that has been AI generated, and it like adds a specific ID so you can go back and see where it came from, check the provenance of it. And so what's great about that is you will be able to tell that this is a generated image versus a whole bunch of other stuff that's just going to get passed off as, oh, well, look, here's Aaron running away from police cars,
Right. Right.
all
Right. Yeah.
like
And
that kind
that's,
of stuff.
yeah, being able to have that, it's part, I think that like the broad initiative is like a content authenticity initiative, but there's a
Yeah.
specific name, and I think it both, it's content might be one of the words. I'm trying to remember the other word. I know exactly what you're talking about. Um, but yeah, to be able to essentially bake into the file, essentially some metadata that says, yeah, this was generated by Adobe Firefly, or this was generated from whatever it may be. Yeah, how they're going to choose to compensate the stock photographers, will be interesting to see, right? I mean, is it just going to be like a flat, we're going to compensate everybody based on the amount of images that was in our training set? Is it going to be somehow based on the prompt? I mean, I could see where maybe based on the prompts used, we compensate people when the words that are keywords on their photos
Mhm.
are, so if I say I want a cat photo, cool. Well, some tiny sliver of a cent will now go to everybody who has a cat photo that was part of our training data set, right? I mean,
Right,
it's
right.
it's hard to say how that'll all work out. It will be interesting to see. I mean, Adobe obviously has a commercial interest in making as much money as they can, but they also have a commercial interest in doing the right thing for the photography and illustration community, because yes, Photoshop and Illustrator are the big players there, but there are also lots of competitors in that space. And if Adobe were to do something really, really terrible, people will go find and use their competitors, right? I mean, there's lots of people that don't use Adobe Photoshop and their software because they object to, the subscription model or some other reason. And so,
Right.
you know, I was excited to see, and we all knew Adobe was going to do something in this space. I was excited to see kind of their entry into that. It's like, oh, this seems promising. Now it is in beta, it's in early beta. We'll see how it all plays out. I mean, if I were a betting man at Adobe Max in October, which I guess is about what 6 months away at this point,
Hmm.
um, I would expect, I'm going to guess that that's probably where we will see the first kind of for real public commercial versions that integrate with the Creative Suite applications and things like that. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that plays out over the next 6 months. So
Yeah.
I guess kind of wrapping things up, I mean, the state of photography AI, and we didn't even really get into the editing software side of things. I mean, I think at this point in the editing software side of things, whether we're talking about content aware fill or sky replacements or any of those kinds of things, changing lighting patterns after the fact, I think those are just new tools we all have in our editing apps, and photographers should embrace them like any new feature in whatever editing app they're using. I'm optimistic at this point that all of this stuff we talked about, from editing apps to generative AI, all of that, you know, coming back to something you said really early on, they're all just tools that we have, and photographers can choose to use them or they can choose not to use them. The reality is, those who choose not to use them are going to be competing in a marketplace with those who do choose to use them. And that may impact your ability to compete in that marketplace, right? The
Yeah.
standard for, you know, work gets better and better every year. I mean, I judge photo competitions, and every year that bar gets higher. And
Hmm.
AI tools that make it easier to make better, more impactful images are part of that. And
Yeah.
that's just how things are, whether you like it or not. What's your take on
Yeah.
kind of the state of things overall?
Well, actually, I think there's also an opportunity to go the other way because I think there is going to be a bit of fracturing, and we see it now anyway. But like in the past couple of years, I've seen a lot more photographers who are doing wet plate colloidal. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember like the
Right.
exact term. Like old film techniques that they are making new works out of, and you know, like that could be a fabulous little niche that somebody goes in because maybe they don't want to have anything to do with AI. They don't want to have anything to do with, even Photoshop or anything like that. And so because things are definitely moving that way and I don't see anything stopping that or slowing down the adoption of these technologies, maybe that brings a whole new opportunity for people who are, only shooting instant film cameras and they're only shooting, these other like large format film cameras, or I mean, it's like that and vinyl records and these things that and printed books that people like people are buying more printed books so that I wouldn't say that it's going to be a balance, but it's not like those things are going to go away. And I think those are going to actually be a little elevated because you can absolutely look and say, I know that this came from this guy's camera using this process, and I like it for that. So
Right.
there's a
The
place for everybody, right?
Yeah, the fact that it doesn't involve AI, a bunch
Yeah.
of AI processing and generated image parts and things like that becomes part of that photographer's technique and things like that. I mean, even today, I mean, even with like the American Society of Photographers, they do a big image competition every year, and they have a raw category, right? You enter a raw photo straight out of the camera, digital photo, not edited in any way, things like that. And yeah, photographers who are entering that and trying to go for that prize, and that those bragging rights, it's like, hey, here's what I can do straight out of my camera, right? I'm not editing this in Photoshop, I'm not compositing things, I'm not fixing the lighting in post. And yeah, someone can set themselves apart. I mean, there's people now that shoot film not because film's necessarily the most efficient way for them to do a photo, but it's because it's what they like and what they enjoy, and it's part of their identity as a photographer is that I
Yeah.
shoot film. And I think you're the same. You've got the right track here. Is there's probably going to be some photographers who proudly will say, "I don't use any AI stuff with my work. This is what I saw in the camera, and here it is."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's good and a good place to leave it. Right there's options out there whether you want to go with the latest bleeding edge technology. There's options if you want to actively resist it. Most people are going to be somewhere in the middle. It was great to chat with you. I'm going to drop links down below in the description to both of our, our newsletters and websites and all that kind of stuff. You said, once again, your website at photo-ai.com. Is that the best place for people to go learn more of this kind of stuff from you?
Yeah, exactly. So either photo AI, so either photo-ai.com or just jeffcarlson.com.
Good deal. Good deal. Yes. And they'll go to jeffcarlson.com. They'll discover that in addition to a photographer, you're also a professional writer, and they can reach out to you to have a discussion about how you feel about ChatGPT, because that's a whole nother set of rabbit holes to go down, I'm sure.
Yeah, seriously.
Sweet. Cool. Well, this was fun. And then the other thing, I think we should maybe do a follow-up on this, actually. I would love to maybe do a Q&A where people ask us questions. We will probably do that as a live stream interactively, but if you have questions about photo AI things, feel free to drop them in the comments down below to kind of start priming that discussion. And would love to know your thoughts as photographers. Are you excited about this stuff? Are you scared about this stuff? Are you pissed about the copyright part of this stuff? What's your take on what have you done with AI? Are you liking it, hating it, needing to spend more time with it? I think it's good to see where we're at right now as we, publish this in April of 2023. Jeff and I will do a follow up here soon, answer some of those questions, probably get into more rabbit holes we haven't even thought of. And I look forward to reading that. So do drop a comment down below with those questions, and stay tuned. When we do that live stream, Jeff and I will both let you know about it on our social media and newsletters and all that in advance. So that will be a fun time here. So thanks again, Jeff, for having this conversation with me.
Yes, thanks for having me on.
Good deal. And thanks to everyone. As always, if this was interesting, feel free to subscribe to the channel, because if you liked this, you're going to find more that you like as well. So until we come back next time, take care.